Podcast. Before we start this episode, I just want to take a quick moment to give some thanks and appreciation to the recent round of followers that I've been receiving on YouTube, on SoundCloud, on Twitter, and on the website. It's definitely been very cool to see that people are getting some value out of what it is that I have to say, and I do appreciate the support, and I am definitely humbled that people are listening to what it is that I have to say, and that it's providing some value to their lives. So for this episode, I wanted to discuss a recent trip to Europe, which was quite fascinating and wildly entertaining as well. And there's some good stories and some good takeaways from it. But we wanted to talk a little bit too about the differences between the United States as well as Europe as far as Western culture goes, and as far as the red pill implications as well. So for those of you that may not be aware, I went to Italy, I went to Spain, and I went to Croatia. And so that was a really great trip. Went with my best friend, and we had a real blast of a time. The first thing I'll definitely say is that it is a shame that in America we have so many resources, but we can't get the concept of food down correctly. We're starting to kind of get it and move in that direction, but from just a food standpoint, when you're in Europe, everything is crazy fresh. It's not genetically modified, or I remember I was in this island in Croatia, and literally they brought a plate of fish for me and my friend to pick which fish we wanted to eat. And these were fish that were swimming around in the ocean that we were sitting next to just 30 minutes before. So it's you literally cannot beat that level of freshness. But just the food is absolutely out of this world delicious. I will definitely say that Croatia has amazing food. Italy had great food, but Spain was just on a whole other level. The food out there was just the best out of anywhere I've ever had, best in the world. So a little travel tip for you: if you're going abroad, if you're a huge foodie, you want food, go to Spain. That's where it's at. So switching gears a little bit, kind of detail the specifics of the journey. Started off in Croatia for a week, sailing around, and then from there went to Venice. Then from Venice went down to Florence for a little bit, then went to Rome, and then went to Barcelona. And so my impression of Croatia is it's a beautiful, really, really cool place to see. They've also very recently discovered tourism, which is very interesting. So in a sense, it's kind of lost its innocence in that everything there is definitely very much geared towards tourism. The women there are absolutely beautiful, very stunning. A lot of them have really great, in shape, really fit bodies. Faces, I would definitely say if you love pretty faces, LA is pretty tough to beat anywhere. So in comparison to that, the faces not necessarily so much, but definitely as far as just overall package, like absolutely. And if you want to just talk about exuding a sort of natural sense of femininity, that's just something that you can't beat over there. The women definitely exude that, and it's kind of a little bit shocking at first initially, especially when you come from a super liberal place like California. It's a nice balance and harmony. You don't feel that the girls there aren't giving off this vibe that they've got something that they need to prove, or they need to show off, or be very like direct and blunt and in your face about them as a woman. It's just like, hey, we're women. This is how we handle it. It's just a much stronger feminine presence that you detect, which is, first it's a little bit shocking, but then when you kind of get your mind a little bit adjusted to it, it blends in quite naturally, and you can really have a good time. Now, what is very interesting about the natives there is that the native Croatian girls are very, very welcoming, very hospitable, but there's also a very large invisible border that you notice pretty quickly, where they're very much like, you're a tourist, so we'll be hospitable and whatnot, but that's as far as it goes. You're still a tourist, so it's very much like when you're trying to talk to or run a little bit of game on like a bartender or a waitress. Sometimes it's very much that distinction mentally that, oh, you're a customer, so there's always going to be that boundary line there, and that's very much what I noticed there. Whereas with other tourists, it was kind of a free for all, anything goes. If you have semi decent game, it's crazy easy. But as far as the natives go, they're definitely a bit more conservative. And so there's very much that huge distinction there. And they're definitely looking more to interact with in a more intersectional level with somebody that's local, where there's a greater potential for an actual future, as opposed to, oh yeah, you're just some cool, fun person that came to hang out for a weekend, and that was that. Now, not to say that can't happen, but that was just the general sense and general vibe. So, bearing all of that in mind, one of the very interesting things is that when I was on a boat with about 28 other people, most of them were couples, and so we were sailing around from island to island, and it was really interesting and fascinating, especially talking to other folks from other parts of Europe. There was only a couple other Americans with us, maybe I think like 2 or 3 others, but everybody else was either from Australia, Sweden, other parts of the world. And so it was really interesting getting sort of that their perspective on a lot of things. First off, don't believe the news media where they tell you that Europe, they hate America and this, that, and the other. It's actually quite the opposite. Europeans love America, and it's really interesting how much they're trying to be like America. And you're going around to these other remote parts of the world, and you'd think that they would have like local music playing or showing like local TV shows, and it's all MTV. It's all American music that they're playing. So you're going around the world, but you're hearing all this American media and culture. And it's actually quite interesting, because when you tell people you're from America, they're like, eyes light up like, oh, you're American. Like, that's super cool. And then like as another level of bonus, if you tell people you're from Los Angeles, then suddenly like, oh my God, you're from Los Angeles. This is crazy. So it's definitely quite interesting. And people are like, oh, you must see like famous people all the time. And me personally, I'm like, well, I mean, it does kind of happen, because I tend to be in areas where either famous people are, or I have friends in the industry. So, I've had a lot of interactions. It's definitely not a normal or typical thing to, run into a bunch of famous people all the time. But, yeah, it happens. I don't know how or why in my case, in a lot of cases, but it does happen to me fairly frequently. But also, I guess, because having grown up here, you're just kind of like, oh, whatever, all right, cool. This person's like, an actor, they're famous, whatever. It's whatever. We're all just people. Like, we just have different jobs. So not too concerned or worried about that. But yeah, so it's definitely very interesting, kind of talking to people, and you definitely do hear a lot of the news media items that are parroted, where they're like, oh yeah, you guys, we feel that your president's racist, or we think that you guys have some terrible race relations, or you guys have this and this issue. And it's literally the exact same thing that you would hear coming off of a CNN report. So it's definitely really interesting that people are in a different part of the world. They have this perspective that's been put forth by the larger media as a whole, and so that's pretty much what they kind of parrot, and that's what they go based off of. So that was definitely very interesting and very fascinating. On the boat, most of the people that we were with were couples, and so if you're any remotely red pill aware, it is crazy easy to see a lot of the red pill principles and dichotomy at play, where these guys were going to bed at 10 o'clock because their wives wanted to go to bed, and they didn't want to go out and explore or party. And one night everyone did wind up going out and party because it was kind of mandated by the crew, like, hey, we're all going to go out and go party on this island because that's what it's known for. And so, like, the husbands were having a great time, and the wives all went to bed like early, and the husbands kind of stayed out with me and my friend. And so the next morning, there was definitely some repercussions that were paid where the wives were very visibly upset, and they were all at their table, like having breakfast, and all the husbands were a little disenfranchised and like had to huddle over with us to have breakfast the next day. So it was quite hilarious and entertaining. But yeah, it's definitely very interesting as well. One of the things that I noticed was that there were a lot of guys that were, fit, good looking guys that were cool, seemed to have a decent head on their shoulders. And, they're, from just a purely aesthetic perspective, their wives were definitely not on the same league. They were definitely probably 3 or 4 points below on the SMV scale, which I thought was a little bit interesting and fascinating. And so it was definitely, I've heard from other bloggers, other readers that, European guys, they tend to be a little bit more on the blue pill scale, like more hardcore entrenched in it. And so you hear a lot of, the sort of blue pill mannerisms and sayings, but then you also see it when you're just like, wow, like, this guy is like a pretty, cool, chill, like decent looking guy. He could like definitely, find a partner that's, more equal on his scale, or maybe like, maybe a little bit higher than him on the scale. But, this just wasn't the case. And so it was really, really fascinating to see and experience firsthand. So Croatia was good. It was entertaining. We unintentionally nicknamed our boat the whaling vessel because we kept running into girls from Wales that were on holiday and wound up bringing them back to the boat. And this one group, the first group we actually brought over, were these two girls. We're at this one club. It was a pretty cool spot, but it was about 3-something in the morning on a Monday night, and the club was still going. But pretty much most of the people there had either paired off, and it wasn't like the club was representing that strong anyways, because it was a Monday night. So there were a couple local girls there that were pretty hot. They were probably easily like 9.5, and there was this beach that was right next to the club, and so they decided to go skinny dipping, which was a show enjoyed by everyone. But they were also swarmed by like about 30 local guys. So we're just like, whatever, we're just gonna, me and my best friend were just there hanging out, gonna entertain ourselves. So then we wound up just talking to these two girls where, they were kind of there just hanging out, and they weren't really attractive, but we're like, hey, we're just gonna talk, have fun, we're here to have a good time. So it doesn't matter, like, if we're talking to hot girls, if we're talking to average, whatever, like we're just gonna have a fun time. So they actually turned out to be super cool and super entertaining. And one of them was also just a super just dirty type of girl, like total freak. She instantly turned the conversation sexual, and her friend was a little bit more prudish, but it was still a very entertaining conversation to have. And so then we're hanging out with them, we're just talking to them, and then we brought him back to the boat just to hang out and just show him around the boat a little bit. And then at like 4:30 in the morning, they were saying, oh, hey, let's because it turns out that they worked on this island, and so they were living there for a couple months. It's like, oh yeah, let's go to some spot, get some pizza, then we can like go back and hang out at our place. And so then me and my friend, now we suddenly felt like hot girls at this point. Where we're just kind of like, no, like it's late, we're like really tired, we got to be up early in the morning, like. So we let them kind of part ways. But I think one of the big red pill takeaways from that is it kind of goes back to what Patrice O'Neill says, that girls can't really charm their way into hooking up with a guy that initially didn't want to hook up with them. That's one of the fundamental differences between kind of guys and girls, is that guys, we can do certain things to kind of overcome like initial like I'm not really that into you, but we have, as guys, we have to evolve strategies to be like more charming or more clever or more funny, whereas with girls it's definitely different. It's more so, hey, you just show up and it is what it is. And this is a case where they're charming and funny, but we just weren't into it, and so we're just like, now we're cool, like you guys can go your merry way. So another incident that happened that was actually quite entertaining, it's probably the most entertaining story from the trip, is that we were on our boat, and it was brand new boat, literally it's maiden voyage, so it had all this cool stuff like a really cool hot tub on the roof of the boat. It had motion activated security camera system. It also had just this awesome dining gallery. And so we're out at this one island, and we're out running around checking out all the cool stuff, learning the history of the island throughout the day. And so we have a very long day, and we get back to our boat at midnight, or we get back to our boat like around 10 o'clock, and we get showered up and everything, so we can go back out and go hit this club that everyone keeps talking about. Now, in this particular island, there's only two ports. There's one port that's the main port, and then there's this other port that's underneath this very giant, very tall bridge that connects this island to the other islands. And so if you want to go back to find this port, you can just tell like any cab driver in the city, like, hey, I need to go under the bridge, which of course sounds totally suspect. But anyways, we get off, we get ready, we're going out at midnight. So we go check out this club. And it was cool. It was definitely very packed. It was definitely a talented place. They were super stingy on the drinks, where we ordered a Jack on the Rocks, and we literally, kid you not, they gave us a glass filled with ice, and then maybe like 8 drops of Jack, and then told us, all right, here's your drink. And we're looking at them like, no, where are our drinks? And like, no, this is your drink. And we're like, wow, okay, all right. So we see what's up here. So, and a side note, our tangent is, if you're traveling in Croatia, go with a local or learn a couple local phrases, because if you don't know any locals or anything like that, or if they see that you're a tourist, then there are a couple things may happen, especially with drinks, where they will either just give you super watered down drinks, or they just like won't really put any alcohol or anything in your drinks whatsoever, and then just charge you. Because they're like, oh, you're a tourist, like you don't know what the difference is, like who cares? So that's one thing me and my friend noticed the first night. We're like, yeah, we had like had a bunch of drinks, and we just like, didn't feel anything. And our host was like, oh yeah, if you're a tourist, they'll definitely really water down your drinks, because they're not giving alcohol away to the tourists. So that's a random sidebar travel tip for you there. So anyways, we're at this club, and then this guy like starts trying to start some shit and pick a fight with my friend. And so we're just like, you know what, like fuck this, like we're not having that great of a time here, like whatever, let's bounce, let's go find somewhere else. So we go outside, we run into these 2 really hot chicks that are actually working for the gentleman's club that's next door. And so they're trying to recruit us to go to the gentleman's club, and we're like, nah, we're not with it. But if you guys want to come hang out with us, then hey, let's go hang out. So we wind up talking to these chicks for a good like 15 minutes, get their story, and it actually turns out that they're in a sense kind of like tourists like us, where they're from different parts of Croatia, but they are only on this island to work seasonally. And so it was kind of an interesting, sort of fascinating window into kind of how daily life is there, where you definitely, and one of the things they definitely told us that they bring a lot of girls from close by countries like Serbia and Bosnia to come and work during the seasonal work. And so it's definitely creates for a very interesting environment. And another sidebar tip, which was given to us by one of the crew guys, is if you're in Croatia, do not go to a strip club as a tourist. because what they will do is they'll have girls, they'll come over, they'll, sit on your lap, whatever. They'll order a bunch of drinks. All the drinks that they order are going to be on your tab. And then also, you get like a bottle of champagne or something, and then, they'll charge you like $800 US for that bottle. And if you're, not going to pay it or whatever, they have a couple relatively sizable gentlemen that will have a nice conversation with you about, what your financial situation might be. So that's another inside travel tip if you're going to Croatia. Stay out of the strip clubs. So anyways, we leave those girls. We wind up shuffling down to this cafe, and we see these two blonde girls that are hanging out or sitting down, having some wine from the cafe. So we're like, hey, this looks like a little cool cafe. Let's go check it out. So we give a little nod to the girls that are there, and then we walk. Just a little, hey, what's up? And then we walk straight in. We start talking to the guy who's running the bar in there, and we start drinking. We order some wine, and then they have this local drink there called rakia, which is like the Croatian version of grappa, which is like an Italian house brandy. And so you can make it from different kinds of fruits or whatnot, but the strongest and most powerful is definitely made from plum. And so we order a couple of those shots, try it. It literally burns me all the way down. Like, it's just, you can feel it going all the way down your esophagus into your stomach, just burning. And so we're there hanging out, talking with the bar guy for about good like 10 minutes or whatever. And then my friend cracks a joke and I start laughing, and then the rakia like comes back up and burns me all over again. I'm like, oh my gosh, how is this still in my system burning me? So we take our wine, we go to sit at the table strategically next to these two girls, and then we're sitting at the table bullshitting for like 2 minutes, and then we just start talking to these girls. So we start talking to them, and then it turns out that they're from Wales, of course. And so they were out on holiday. It was their last day before they had to go back. And so we're like, all right, like there could be some potential here. So we wind up just having a really fun, random conversation with them. Everything in the old town on this island closed down at 2, but there was other places around that were open till like around 4 o'clock. So like, hey, let's just go, have one more drink somewhere else and, see where the night goes. And so like, oh, yeah, cool, that sounds good. So we go outside and so we roam around. And so then we find this other club where there's like some really wasted 19-year-old chick out front. And we're just like, we're not sure if we like want to go into this because we're already at another club and we're not feeling like going back to the club. And so I was like, well, like this island's small, like our boat is, we have an epic boat. Like, let's just go get some wine and let's go hang out there. It's like 5 minutes away. So I go to this like little newsstand and I'm like, this is Europe. Of course they should be selling alcohol. And I go to the lady at the counter. I'm like, hey, can I get some wine? And she's like, sure. I was like, can I get 2 bottles of wine? And it's like, yeah, here you go. She gives me 2 bottles of red wine at 2:30 in the morning for $9 US. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this country. And so then we walk over to a cab, and I tell them like, all right, this is going to sound a little bit suspect. Like we're kind of like arms dealers or whatnot, but just go with it. Like, what? And I'm like, tell the cab driver, all right, dude, take us under the bridge. And the guy's like, all right, cool. And so they were explaining like, yeah, like nothing makes you sound more like an arms dealer than saying, yeah, it's this unseemly hour, but please come back let's go back to our boat that's under a bridge. So we get back to the boat. We're hanging out there. We take the girls around, show them different parts of the boat, whatnot. Then we're kicking it on the main deck, drinking a bunch of wine. So then I tell my one buddy that, oh, hey, you should, we kind of gotten cozy with, we each got kind of cozy with one of the girls. So I told my friend, like, hey, man, why don't you go show this girl this cool thing that's on the other side of the boat? And, don't remember exactly what it was that I said, but it was essentially equating to that, which he told the guys, like, yeah, no worries. Like, here, I want to show you something. So then I start making out with the girl that I've been talking with, and then probably after about 5 minutes, I'm like, follow me for a minute. And he's like, what? I was like, no, just come follow me. And so then I take her to our cabin room. And so we had a shared cabin room with separate beds, and we get into the room, start making out, then start finger blasting this chick, and then to put it not so crudely, I'm in the middle of getting a quite fantastic blowjob, and then suddenly I hear the door handle like jiggling, and so I'm just like, ah, crap! All right, this could be my buddy like trying to come back into the room and hook up with his girl, and so the handle's jiggling for a little bit, and then it just stops, and so then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. They probably went away. And so then the girl I was like, oh, you know what? Like, we should probably like I should probably check with my friend because it's like 4:00 in the morning. And so we've got, be up early. And I'm like, yeah, no worries. We totally check out what's happening. So then we go find my buddy and his girl up on the deck. And so the girl he's with is like, oh, yeah, we should probably call a cab and like, get back because we got to be back early. So like, all right, cool. So they call a cab. And then we walk them out towards the main boat. And so as we're walking to the dock, this other group of people, they're just getting dropped off in a cab. And one of them is this super drunk guy. This other one's this like German kid and this other girl. And so the girl I was with was like, I could really use a cigarette right now, but I don't have a lighter on me. And so I asked one of the group, this new group, hey, any of you guys got a lighter? And the young kid's like, yeah, I totally do. And I'm like, all right, dude, don't go anywhere for like 20 minutes. This kindness will not go unnoticed. Then my buddy, the girl that he was with, said, oh my gosh, I totally forgot my bag. I need to go get it. Can you come with me? So our friend's like, oh yeah, I'll totally come like help you look for your bag. I'm just like, all right, go get it, player. So they're gone for 10 minutes and then they come back. And I'm just, bullshitting with the girl I was talking to. So they come back, they get in the cab, we send them off. And so then I talked to my buddy, I was like, dude, like, so did you smash her out? He's like, yeah, dude, totally did. And I was like, all right, there you go. She's like, yeah, dude, she wanted to like, have sex right on the roof of the boat or the top deck of the boat. But it's like, I knew there was a security camera there, so I couldn't just, I'm like, yeah, no, I feel you. So, and he's like, well, I'm with yours. It's like, oh, dude, I was in the middle of getting some epic dome when you decided to come back into the room. He's like, oh, dude, I was like trying to get in the room, but I couldn't figure out how to like open the door or unlock it. So I always wound up not going back in there. And then I think we heard you in there. So then we decided to go somewhere else. I was like, oh, snap. It's like, yeah, if you would have waited like 5 more minutes, I could have like been good and wrapped up. But hey, no, it's all good. Like, it's just part of the hilariousness of the adventure. So then, instead of going back to our boat, we actually go to a different boat that's next to ours where that young kid who gave me the cigarette lighter. And so we're kicking with him at like 5:30 in the morning. And he turns out the super drunk guy is the captain of this other boat. And so we're hanging out with him. The kid is this student that's just traveling around for his break with his girlfriend. It turns out he's like a MotoGP racer and is big into that, which is pretty cool. And so then we wound up hanging out with them until like 6 something in the morning when the sun rises. So we're like, all right, we got to get back to our boat, go back to bed. So before we leave, the captain of the boat, who's still kind of drunk, is like, yeah, dude, like couple of our crew members went out partying with like a member of your guys' crew. So that worked on the boat. So hopefully they all make it back by 7 because that's when the boat's leaving, but who knows? So we get back to our boat, we pass out, wake up the next day. I'm going to the top deck just to go lounge out, and then one of the crew guys comes up to me. He's like, hey man, you had a fun night last night. I'm like, oh man, you have no idea. And he's just like, oh, I think I do. I think you and your friend both had some fun. And he's like, oh, I mean, I'm sure you got some suspicions. And he's like, oh, I mean, you guys seem to like blondes. I was like, oh, hi, how'd you know that? And so he's like, dude, come in like an hour, come find me. Like, I want to show you guys something. So like an hour later, me and my best friend, we go to the main crew deck, and we go to the control room. And so the crew guy's there, and then 2 other crewmen are there, and the captain's there. And so they're like, hey, so don't tell anybody this, but the assistant chef, the assistant chef on the boat, he actually went out partying with some other people from a different boat last night and didn't come back. So, we were just needed to review the security tapes just to make sure like nothing happened to him while he was on the boat. So we had to check the security cameras, and of course the motion activated. So when we were looking through the security cameras, of course, lo and behold, at 4 something in the morning, who do they see? Me and my friend running around this boat with these 2 blonde chicks. And so it was actually quite hilariously entertaining watching us like roam around back and forth on this boat, drinking some wine, me taking this one chick in the room and then swagging out later. And then, my friend like going back and taking his girl into the room and then him swagging out later. So it was actually quite hilariously entertaining. And this was like our third day on this trip. And so after that, the crew became like our best friends, and we definitely partied with them a lot. That was a super entertaining story. And, there's definitely quite a few takeaways from it. I mean, one is just be open to having fun no matter what. And, don't be afraid to, if you're not feeling the vibe or the energy of the night, then don't be afraid to, change it up. Like we were at this one club and we weren't just having a good time because we were getting ripped off on drinks. Some guy was there just trying to pick a fight with my friend. So we're just like, you know what, like this venue's not doing it for us. Let's go find somewhere else, and wound up going to this cafe. And then two, just, taking charge and taking lead of the night, where it's like, hey, you know what, like, why look for another club? We got a boat. Let's just go kick it back there. So, hey, got some wine, got back to a boat, boom, made it happen. And then, telling my buddy, hey, why don't you go check that side of the boat out with your girl? Then, making out with mine and telling her, hey, come follow me for for a couple minutes. So, being aware of and in charge of that situation, and just, not being afraid to, really take command of the night. So it leads to just a good, fun time. And then, of course, having it all caught on camera, which is actually quite hilarious, just makes it that much even better of a story. So yeah, that's the takeaways from that particular evening, which is definitely one of the most entertaining stories from the entire trip. But yeah, I mean, the rest of Croatia was definitely a lot of fun. Italy was quite fascinating, especially the dichotomy between sort of Venice, Florence, and Rome. Venice is cool because it's essentially like a shopping bar, or it's like a giant shopping mall. So the way the city is laid out is actually like really cool, but it's also kind of wild to wrap your head around. Like it's just all shops, like all these boutique shops and like cafes and restaurants. So it's actually really, really fascinating place. I liked it. It definitely had some a cool vibe to it. There's definitely a cool spot there called Harry's Bar that's got some very good history to it. So it's definitely worth checking out. They invented the Bellini. If you don't know what that drink is, you should look it up. It's actually pretty refreshing. A heads up, it's definitely way crazy overpriced, where we're talking like, €30 for like a sandwich, or, like a little Bellini that was like €21. So, just a heads up, it's definitely a very pricey place, but at the same time, like it's got a cool bit of history. And so it's like, hey, if you're here and you're just visiting, like, yeah, why not? But just don't go in there like thinking that, all right, like it might be like a, semi-pricey place, or it's going to be like on average, like, 20 something euro or whatever for an entree, where like, it's definitely a noticeable amount of a price difference, no matter what your income bracket is. So just a heads up on that front. But then, getting to Florence. Florence, Italy is actually really cool. I like that city a lot. The vibe and the energy of that city was super cool. Like super, super cool city. I like that city a lot. I could definitely see myself spending some time there. And it's just not because of like the art and the history of the city, but just also just it's the vibe and the flow of the city. Florence was a really, really cool city. And there's definitely had some great times there, and there are definitely a lot of beautiful women in Florence. It was a really good city. Rome is interesting. It's one of those cities where I'm glad I saw it, but I don't ever need to really go back to it. Just because, one, it's definitely a big city, but it's also, the energy of that city is very frantic. So it reminds me a lot of Manhattan, New York, which isn't necessarily my particular vibe that I can thrive in, just because the energy feels just a little bit too frantic. Like I'm okay with like a good flow and a good sense of being busy or purpose. But when it's just frantic, then to me it feels like very disconnected. where, Florence definitely had a very busy, there's a lot happening, a lot going on kind of vibe, but there was a harmony to the city that you could like tap into, and then you get in the flow into it. Rome definitely felt very frantic. And then actually randomly when I was in Rome, it turned out there was like 8 other people that I knew that were there. And hilariously, there was this one chick I met in Croatia that her friend was being a cockblock that night, but we found out we were going to be in Rome the exact same day. So we made plans to meet up in Rome. And so when we were there in Rome, my phone, when I was in Rome, decided that, to hell with my international plan. It's just going to not work unless there's Wi-Fi. And of course, the critical like 2 hours when I needed Wi-Fi, literally could not find Wi-Fi for the life of me. So wound up not meeting up with that chick, and then just roaming around Rome with my best friend, and we still had a cool time. We still made the most of it, and that's one of the things about when you advance in your red pill awareness or in your sense of game, you're definitely gonna detach yourself from the outcome. You're not gonna be outcome dependent. So it's like, oh man, I didn't give me up with this chick like the whole night's Rome. It's like, no, I was still exploring around Rome. I saw some really cool stuff, including just chilling at this cafe right next to the Pantheon at 2 a.m, having some really awesome food with my best friend, just listening to some crazy eccentric people. So that was a really fun. It's still a fun time, but yeah, driving Rome is utter insanity. But Rome is definitely cool just because of the scale of it, as well as the history of it, and there is some really cool epic stuff to see it. Now, that being said, I don't necessarily need to go back to Rome. I'm cool on that front, but I'm definitely glad that I saw it. And then Spain was I went to Barcelona, and so Barcelona was a fun, wild, cool town. It was very interesting because everyone I talked to, everywhere I went in Europe, they were all warning me about the pickpocket epidemic, so much that I was actually a little paranoid, where I wore shorts and put all my money and valuables in my shorts, and then I wore pants over those shorts, so that way I'd have nothing in my pockets, so pickpockets couldn't actually snag me. But I realized it's kind of like any other big city, where if you're a little careless, then yeah, pickpockets will get you. But I didn't bump into any pickpockets or anything like that, so maybe I was just fortunate. But yeah, definitely had a blast of a time in Barcelona. It was a pretty cool city, a lot of really beautiful girls there, and we wound up going to this really cool speakeasy spot called Paradiso, which if you're ever in Barcelona, check out this place, Paradiso. Even if there's a little bit of a line, it's definitely worth the wait. The presentation on the drinks alone is unparalleled, unparalleled. It's really, really cool. There's one drink, like a Trojan horse, that is actually served inside of a little wooden horse, which is really awesome. Or I had this apple something or other, and it was actually served in a glass apple. It was just, the presentation was just unparalleled. And then we wound up meeting these super cool, this guy and this girl, who, she was from LA actually, he was from Seattle, and these 2 other chicks from London. We wound up meeting them there, and then they told us that they were going to this other club afterwards. So we wound up going to this club, and so we went to this club called Opium, which was a wild, crazy time. We wound up getting a table there because it only turned out to be $60 a person to get a table for 6 people, which, yeah, that's a super great deal. And we didn't have to stand in the massive freaking line. So it's yeah, all right, cool. We're here. We're whatever. We buy our bottle. If we waited 3 hours and got in and spent, we would have spent $60+ anyways per person. So it's just yeah, we cut the time down, and we also have a place where we can sit and chill. It was cool. So yeah, we wound up hanging out there for quite a while. And I will definitely say that maybe it's because the city is just such a party city, or maybe because of the fact that I was at a club called Opium, but I've never been offered or asked for more drugs in my entire life. I guess fortunately for myself, I don't have that switch that makes me I need to go crazy. But it's definitely me and my friend, we wound up hanging out up front talking to these Russian chicks from Ireland. So yeah, no, Russian Irish, it was, hey, it just happens that way sometimes. But so we wound up talking to them, and then there was like some dude that was coked out that was like harassing me and harassing them. But it's kind of funny, like when you're dressed well, you got a good composure about yourself, and you just give off a vibe of like, yeah, like I know my shit. Then people pick up on that, and so this guy who was like coked out off the bat was just kind of like, oh hey, you're a pickup guy, huh? Like you think you can pick up better than me? Da 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 da. And he's just like trying to challenge me on it. And I was like, dude, I didn't even mention or say anything about pickup or game or what. I've just been like chilling here, like, just talking to some chicks. And so I was like, oh, dude, yeah, no, just totally have fun. Like, yeah, dude, go show me how it's done, man. I want you to show me how it's done. Show me how it's done. So like, and he just kept going off on some rant, but then eventually finally kind of left. But it's kind of entertaining because, you get these guys that are out there and they're right outside the club and they're like, got these little backpacks or little carts and like, hey man, you want to buy like a sandwich? You want to buy like a beer? And I'm just like, nah, like I'm cool. And this one guy, like, let's look at this like nice old regular guy, like a wedding ring on and everything. And he's just like, a little backpack. He's like, hey man, you want some sandwiches? Like, I'm cool. He's like, hey, you want a beer? You want a soda? I'm like, I'm cool. Then he just kind of like looks around and then he taps his nose a little bit and goes, you want a coffee shop? And I'm like instantly like, oh, I think I know exactly where this guy's going. And I'm like, nah, man, I'm straight, man. Like I'm cool on that front. So all right, cool, no worries, bro. Just let me know if you change your mind. So he roams off, and then like 5 minutes later, these two dudes like out of nowhere come like, hey, bro, like we're looking for a coffee shop. And I was like, actually, there's a guy over there selling sandwiches with a backpack. He can tell you where a coffee shop is. So there's your inside tip too in Barcelona. If you're looking for, I guess, some Coke, then ask a guy for a coffee shop. But, hey, if do what you will on your own. I don't mess with that stuff because I'm just like, again, like I said before, I don't have that switch. So I've never had that temptation or that appeal. And maybe that's why people offer me copious amounts of things because that's like whatever, just does nothing for me. But anyways, to each their own, man, I don't judge. So, yeah, that was Barcelona. It was a wildly entertaining time, and we left the club at like 6:30 in the morning, and then wound up walking the 2 miles back to our hotel because we didn't want to pay the guy like €20 to take us in a rickshaw back to the hotel. So like walked back to the hotel, got there like 8 o'clock in the morning, and then walked straight into breakfast at the hotel while everybody else was just like kind of waking up, starting their day. Like we're just coming from this insane club party, and we're just go in, eat some breakfast, and then pack our bags and fly back to the States. So yeah, that was the European adventure. So that's a large reason why I've been very light on the content flow because I've been playing a lot of catch up in life, having been back from that. But wanted to share that journey and that adventure with you, as well as just some interesting observations, especially for through that red pill lens, and seeing a little bit of the intersexual dynamics at play. And one thing I definitely will say is that the general sense of femininity that is exuded by European women is just light years ahead of where a lot of girls in the States are. And it's partially a cultural thing where you're dealing with slightly more traditional culture. But what's interesting about it is that these are very, very educated, very progressive women that also don't have that like Americanized, neo masculinity that a lot of women here tend to exude, where it's like if you're, as I was talking about with Goldman on that interview, it's knowing your role in the dance and being able to have that dance, the mating dance or the mating ritual. And so, here you definitely run into it more often than not, where girls are trying to like take on your role in the dance and like take that part away. And it's like, oh, let me do my part of the dance. Like you do your part of the dance, like it'll all work out well together. Whereas, a lot of the European women are, they just have that very natural sense and grace where they're like, oh, okay, like you're doing this part of the dance, I'm going to do my part of the dance, and we're going to have that back and forth, and we're going to have that good flow. So that was definitely a very, very large kind of takeaway. And definitely one of the things I definitely learned too is that the guys there tend to be a little bit more feminized. So it's not just here where you're seeing like, kind of the rise of the effeminate male, but you definitely in Europe, you're seeing like the more feminized kind of guys. And so, girls are a little bit frustrated and kind of have to adjust. But the plus side is if you're like even remotely game aware and you got just like a little semi decent sense of game, you can definitely do extremely, extremely well in Europe. And I would definitely say it's also very interesting too, kind of goes a little bit hand in hand with economics and finances, where that they say make your money in America but spend it in Europe. The European lifestyle is definitely very calm, very chill, very free flowing, almost kind of bohemian-ish, which is really cool. And you're definitely a lot of parts of Europe, your dollar kind of goes a bit further. But if you just talk to people about opportunities, the opportunities are so much more restricted over there. It's basically like, hey, you get out, you try and find a good job that you can kind of stay at for a while and, kind of move up the ranks a little bit. And then if you don't find something by the time you're like 35, 38, then you're just like, branded and labeled as like, oh, you failed. So you might as well just give up on life. So whereas here in America, you can reinvent yourself as many times as you want, and you're actually encouraged to. So that's definitely, a very big drastic difference. And that's something that definitely, like, I've always been grateful and appreciative of that fact here, but I just have a stronger and reinforced appreciation for that here, especially after seeing that over there. So it's, again, like, nowhere's perfect. Like America, we're definitely not perfect. I definitely do think we get a lot more right than anywhere else in the world. And that's why I wouldn't really want to live anywhere else. But it's not to say that in Europe they don't do some other things like a little bit better than we do it here, or they don't, not to say that they don't do anything like fantastic, because they definitely do some really awesome, cool things right in Europe. So it's kind of like with, that money where it's, make your money in America, go spend it in Europe. The same is kind of true of game. Like, develop your game here in America and then go take it overseas and then just watch wonders happen. It's quite wild. Just in general, travel is a good, amazing experience for anyone to partake in. Just because it not only doesn't broaden your horizons, but just it helps you get outside your comfort zone, and it also gives you an appreciation for what you have here as well as how other people have it. And it is an invaluable experience. It is a truly, truly invaluable experience. So I highly would encourage you. And you can do it for not a whole lot of money. You don't need like, tens of thousands of dollars to go travel. I mean, you can travel for as little as like $2,000. And, you can get overseas and, do everything that I did for, I don't know, 4,000 to, 6,000, depending on like how crazy you really, really, really want to go. So you don't need a whole bucket load of cash to do it. There's a lot of different avenues you can look into to make it happen. But definitely, it's a very worthwhile experience. So yeah, that is my takeaway from the European trip and adventure. Definitely glad to be back in the States. Glad to be getting back to working. Just from a physical rest standpoint, because me and my best friend, we hit up 16 cities in 16 days, and we had a Fitbit keeping track of everything. So we actually physically we walked over 100 miles on that trip. So it's definitely a lot of run around walking, but it was definitely a really, really cool trip that I was very grateful to have taken, and definitely fired up my travel bug to go hit up and explore some other places and test life out and my game out there as well. But that is all that I had to really discuss, and wanted to share that with you listeners out there. So again, thank you everyone who's been a listener, and thank you to everyone who's been a subscriber, and to the more recent round of subscribers. Greatly appreciate having you guys on here. Again, feel free to hit me up over my website or Twitter or any of the SoundCloud or YouTube. If you've got people that you would like for me to reach out or interview, I'd be more than happy to see if I can make that happen. Or if there's any particular topics that you want to discuss, or hear my thoughts on, let me know. Feel free. Again, like I said, I'm very accessible over SoundCloud, YouTube, Twitter, and and on my website. So website's alphajedi.com, and you can reach me at Twitter at the Alpha Jedi. So yeah, I very much appreciate everyone listening in. And that's all that I have on this episode. I look forward to talking with you on the next episode. Cheers.